The room was a forgotten chamber, its walls whispering secrets to the dust mites that floated in the light. Emily's eyes, heavy as ancient stones, blinked open, and her mind clawed its way out of the abyss of slumber. The air clung to her skin, thick and oppressive, as if it had absorbed the anguish of lost souls. She tried to sit up, but her body was a marionette with severed strings. Her limbs resisted, each movement an act of defiance against the gravity that clung to her bones. Panic surged through her veins, a wildfire consuming reason. Where was she? Why was she here, sprawled on the cold, unforgiving hardwood floor of her own living room? The room itself seemed to hold its breath, as if it too was waiting for answers. Emily's memories were shards of glass, sharp, fragmented. The laughter of her children, their small bodies tucked into bed, echoed in the recesses of her mind. But now, the house was a mausoleum of silence. The curtains hung like shrouds, their fabric heavy with the weight of secrets. The windows were boarded up, crude planks nailing them shut against the outside world. The doors, once portals to safety, were sealed, as if the house itself had swallowed her whole. Emily's pulse quickened. She pressed her palm to the floor, feeling the chill seep through her skin. The wood was rough, unforgiving. She remembered the warmth of her children's hugs, their laughter like sunlight filtering through leaves. But where were they now? Why was she alone in this twilight realm? Her gaze swept the room, taking in the familiar artifacts, the worn armchair by the window, its upholstery faded, the dusty bookshelves, their spines cracked and forgotten, the family photographs on the mantelpiece, their faces blurred by time. Were they hers? The faces seemed like strangers now, lost in the fog of memory. Emily pushed herself upright, her muscles protesting. The room seemed to lean in, its walls closing in on her. She staggered toward the window, her fingers brushing against the boarded-up glass. Outside, the world was a gray canvas, devoid of life. The laughter of her children was a distant echo, swallowed by the silence.
"Where am I?"
she whispered, her voice swallowed by the room. The answer eluded her, slipping through her fingers like smoke. She pressed her forehead against the window, staring into the void. The moon hung like a silver coin, its light feeble against the darkness. The house held its secrets close, its time-worn walls bearing witness to forgotten joys and sorrows. Emily's journey had just begun, a quest for answers, for the truth that lay hidden in the cracks of the floorboards, the crevices of the walls. She would unravel the mystery, even if it meant confronting the shadows that danced at the edges of her consciousness. And as she stood there, a lone figure in a house that seemed to breathe, she wondered, had she stepped into a nightmare or a forgotten dream? The silence wrapped around her, a cloak of uncertainty, and she took a deep breath. The house held its breath too, waiting for her next move. Emily's heart beat in sync with the rhythm of the forgotten laughter, urging her forward. The last thing she remembered was tucking her children into bed, their giggles like butterflies in flight. But now, the house held her captive, its secrets etched into the very walls. She would find her way out, she vowed, even if it meant peeling back the layers of memory, one splintered truth at a time. The darkness watched, its eyes hidden in the cracks, as Emily stepped into the unknown, her footsteps echoing through the hollows of her own living room. Emily's heart thudded against her ribcage, its rhythm a desperate plea for answers. She clung to consciousness, her limbs unsteady as she staggered to her feet. The hallway yawned before her, its walls adorned with family photos, each frame a frozen tableau of happier times. But where were they now? Mark, her steadfast husband with eyes like weathered oak, and their two children, Lily and Ethan, their laughter echoing through these very walls. The kitchen beckoned, its once familiar contours now alien, like a room glimpsed in a fever dream. The refrigerator hummed, its light flickering intermittently, casting ominous shadows on the linoleum floor. Emily's breaths were shallow, as if the air itself held secrets. She opened the fridge, her fingers trembling, hoping for answers. But all she found were rotting remnants, a half-empty carton of milk, a wilted lettuce head, and a stench that clawed at her throat like a desperate plea for release. "Focus, Emily," she chided herself. The front door beckoned, its rough wood under her trembling fingertips. The bolt was rusted shut, a silent sentinel guarding her escape. The windows were no better, nailed down, their glass obscured by layers of neglect and dust. Outside, the world was a void, swallowed by darkness. No moon graced the sky, no stars blinked in sympathy. Just an abyss, stretching into infinity. Why? The question echoed in her mind, a relentless refrain. Why was she here, trapped in this house of whispering walls? The hallway creaked, a sound like old bones protesting. Emily spun around, her pulse racing, her bare feet sinking into the threadbare carpet. The floral wallpaper curled like gnarled fingers, as if waiting for her to unravel its secrets. She followed the sound, her steps hesitant, her mind a maze of fragmented memories. The hallway seemed to shrink, its walls closing in on her. She reached the bedroom door, its handle icy against her palm. The room beyond was a time capsule, its disheveled bed a testament to her hurried departure. But where were her family? Their laughter, their warmth, had it all been swallowed by the silence? Emily stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. The curtains hung heavy with the weight of absence. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled, as if someone had fled in haste. She touched the pillow, half expecting it to yield answers, but it remained mute, a witness to her solitude. And then she saw it, the cracked mirror on the dresser. Her reflection wavered, a ghostly apparition. Her eyes, once vibrant, now held a hollow gaze. She traced the lines on her face, the worry etched into her forehead, the fatigue lurking in the corners of her mouth. How long had she been here? How many days, nights, lifetimes? Emily's resolve hardened. She would find them. Mark, Lily, Ethan, they were out there, lost in this twilight realm. She would pry open the bolt, shatter the windows, and step into the abyss if she had to. The house watched, its walls leaning in, as if urging her forward. The silence thickened, a cloak of uncertainty, but she would not surrender. The bedroom door stood ajar, its hinges groaning as if reluctant to reveal the secrets beyond. Emily pushed it open, her breath catching in her throat like a fragile moth trapped in a spider's web. The room lay before her, seemingly unchanged. The queen-sized bed, with its faded quilt, the dresser adorned with family photographs, and the cracked mirror that had witnessed countless reflections. But the atmosphere clung to her, thick and suffocating. Shadows slithered across the walls, elongated and sinister. They pooled in the corners, where dust motes danced in a macabre waltz. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the intruder in its midst. And there, sitting on the bed, was a man. His face was obscured by a tattered hood, its frayed edges casting shadows over his features. But his eyes, oh those eyes, they gleamed with malevolence, twin flames in the darkness. They bore into Emily's soul, dissecting her thoughts, unraveling her defenses. He held a worn-out book, its pages yellowed and brittle, as if it had absorbed the weight of years. Emily recognized it instantly. It was her childhood diary, the repository of her secrets, her dreams, her fears. How had he found it? Panic clawed at her chest.
How?
Her voice cracked, a fragile thread threatening to snap.
How did you get in here?
The man chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth, like the rustling of dead leaves.
I've always been here, Emily. Watching. Waiting.
Emily's mind raced. She remembered the nightmares, the whispers in the dark, the sensation of unseen eyes tracing her every move. But she dismissed them as figments of her imagination, the residue of childhood fears.
You took my family. Where are they?
The man leaned closer, his breath fetid, like decay and damp earth.
They're safe, Emily. For now. But you...
His eyes bore into hers.
You're my canvas.
He opened the diary, revealing pages filled with her secrets. The crushes she'd never confessed, the fears that had gnawed at her, the darkest moments she'd buried deep within. Emily's heart pounded, each beat echoing through the room.
What do you want?
Madness. I want to unravel your mind, stitch by stitch, to see the terror in your eyes when you realize there's no escape.
He gestured to the window, where the night pressed against the glass like a malevolent force.
Look outside, Emily. What do you see?
Emily obeyed, her gaze drawn to the darkness beyond. Shapes moved, twisted figures, half human, half nightmare. Their eyes glowed crimson, hungry. They clawed at the window, their mouths opening in silent screams as if pleading for release.
Who are they?
Emily's voice trembled.
Your family, or what's left of them. They're trapped in the void, waiting for you to join them.
Emily's sanity teetered on the edge, her mind a tightrope stretched over an abyss. She glanced at the diary, its words shifting, rearranging themselves as if mocking her. The man's laughter echoed, filling the room, a discordant symphony of malevolence. She had to choose, surrender to the darkness or fight for her family, even if it meant unraveling her own mind. The mirror reflected her indecision, her hollow gaze staring back at her. The room held its breath, waiting for her next move. Emily stepped forward, her footsteps echoing through the hollows of her own living nightmare. The man watched, his eyes hungry, as she teetered on the precipice of madness. The abyss beckoned, and Emily wondered if she would ever find her way back to the light.
Write your descent into madness. Describe the horrors you see. Only then will you reunite with your family.
Emily's trembling hand reached for the pen, its weight unfamiliar, as if forged from the bones of forgotten poets. The paper before her was pristine, its blankness mocking her desperation. She hesitated, her mind a tempest of doubts and half-formed prayers. Shadows clung to the corners, elongated and sinister, as if they too hungered for her words. The walls leaned in, their floral wallpaper curling like the petals of dying flowers. Emily's pulse raced, each beat a frantic plea for escape. She wrote, her strokes uneven, the ink bleeding into the fibers of her sanity. Her words spilled forth, a desperate plea for salvation, for release from this labyrinth of dread. But the darkness seeped through the walls, insidious tendrils that whispered promises of eternal suffering. The pen became an extension of her fear, etching nightmares onto the page. As Emily's mind fractured, she realized the man wasn't trying to drive her mad. He was a parasite, feeding off her terror, growing stronger with each stroke of the pen. His eyes gleamed in the dim light. He reveled in her unraveling, a conductor orchestrating her descent into the abyss. And so she wrote until her vision blurred, until the walls bled, until her screams merged with the howling wind outside. The diary became a vessel for her torment, its pages absorbing her fractured thoughts. The ink pooled, forming grotesque shapes, the gnarled limbs of forgotten nightmares, the gaping maws of ancient beasts. Outside, the night pressed against the window, its fingers clawing at the glass. Emily glimpsed twisted figures, half human, half specter, wandering the void. Their eyes glowed crimson, hungry for her suffering. They were her family, or what remained of them, trapped in this twilight realm. The man murmured, leaning over her shoulder. His breath was fetid, like decay and decayed dreams.
Your mind spills it willingly. The horrors aren't outside, Emily. They're within.
The man chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth, as if he knew her fate was sealed. The diary filling, page by page, with her unraveling mind. Emily, lifting her weightless hand away from the diary, glimpses up, seeing Ethan, Mark, and Lily waiting for her off in the abyss of the night. She went to them, trapped, but finally free from the longing of being with her beloved family again.